Giant because of injury he had, back in 2014? Does that make any sense? And after the Mets spent all this money, what are the odds makers saying the Mets' chances are to win the World Series? Have they passed the Astros? We'll talk about that, and we'll go ahead and look at the two teams to kind of compare the two teams. Just something that we were pondering right before the holidays, and so we'll talk about this and more on this edition of the Locked On Astros podcast.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Astros, your daily Astros podcast. Here are your hosts, Eric the Man Huysman and Brett H-Town Wheelhouse Chancey.
We are Locked On Houston Astros, and we hope that you join us for a daily Locked On Astros podcast. My name is Eric Huysman. You can find me on Twitter at Eric Talk Stros. Find the show at Locked On Astros, your team every day. Brett, where can you find you at?
They can find me at H-Town Wheelhouse on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. They can find me at Stros411 on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Always positive, always Stros.
Alrighty, guys. Thank you for making the Locked On Astros podcast your first listen every day. Whether it's on YouTube, go and keep on subscribing to us. Go ahead and make us your first listen on your way to work on Apple, Odyssey, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Go ahead and make the right choice. Going into New Year, we always make New Year's resolutions. Go ahead and listen to the Locked On Astros podcast a little bit more. And today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. So I know that we're going to talk a little bit about, the odds of the Astros winning the World Series, according to BetOnline. We're also going to look at some of Michael Brantley's quotes after, I think it was a virtual interview or something, but
Right.
After officially signing, he did have some quotes. We'll talk about that. We'll go and compare the Astros and the Mets and just see how close the two teams are, because yes, the Mets are doing a lot of stuff and they may be pissing a lot of people off in baseball, mainly the commissioner, because he's out there spending money like there's no rules there. Yes, they have the Steve Cohen tax, but the luxury tax threshold, but he's went right past that, and a lot of people are coming out and saying that this is basically thumbing his finger at Rob Manfred, saying you can't control me, I control myself. And so a lot for us to discuss. What do you want to start with, Brett?
Well, let's start with the odds, because I think that dovetails into a whole lot of different conversations. I've had some really good times interacting with people on Spaces on Twitter. And if you're on Twitter, you haven't done that, and you see myself or Eric on there discussing Astros baseball, jump in there, jump in the conversation. I get a lot of understanding and knowledge, basically the heartbeat of what, Astros nation is saying, because it's not just about what Eric or Brett thinks. It's about what you guys as listeners and viewers think. It really adds a lot of value to our show. But when you look at the betonline.ag odds and this is after Cohen spins, after Cohen just goes out there like a drunken sailor and just throws caution into the wind. And this is what it says right here, that the Houston Astros are still the favorite, 25-4 odds plus 625. The Mets now are 7-1 odds. They're right in second place. The Dodgers are 15-2 odds, tied with the Yankees at 15-2, both at plus 750. So right now, if you were to put money down plus 625, you do the math. You bet $100. You can do the math on that. I'll let you know this, Eric. I got in on this Astros team when they were plus 750, I believe. So my reward would be a little bit different than what we show here. But what's interesting is after the Yankees, you have the Braves and the Padres and the Phillies. You have the Padres over the Phillies, which is kind of shocking. You have the Mariners in the mix and the Blue Jays. You have the Cardinals. And then after that, there seems to be a drop-off. The Guardians are kind of nowhere to be found. The Giants are left. The Rangers have moved up, Eric, because of their signing. So what this tells me is that even though Steve Cohen has gone out there and clearly is trying to buy a championship, like smartly adding Carlos Correa next to his best friend, Francisco Lindor, after adding Verlander, after signing Nemo.
Don't
I
forget
mean,
about Brooks Raley.
oh, and Brooks Raley, right? Exactly. Former Dusty Baker extraordinaire, right? Um, but look, the Mets are doing what they need to now to win because they don't have in development or in the making like the Astros have had or have. Even though the Astros have a bottom tier, quote unquote, minor league system, they still produce superstars. So you can't begrudge Steve Cohen for doing this, okay? These owners have said, we're going to spend more money. We're going to go out there and we're going to buy championships. But clearly they're not. One example that was given to me, Eric, was the Oakland A's owner. The Oakland A's owner is also a part owner in two MLS teams. He's worth $2.9 billion. Their payroll is terrible. Jim Crane is worth $1.8 billion, according to Forbes, and he is in the top 10 of payrolls. So clearly, spending is not necessarily bad, but what has ticked people off, like you mentioned in the intro, is how much is being spent. And my only response to that is if you don't like it, go spend it. I mean, if you're going to take the Cohen approach, go spend it. If not, do what the Astros did, tank, because we know that's what they did, and build a club from the inside out. That's why the Astros have sustained success, not because of deep pocketbooks, because of smart financial decisions.
Yeah. And I think that the Astros are doing what they need to do. They're not breaking the bank, so to speak. They're not going out and committing to these long-term deals. And I think actually these players are going to regret signing these 13-year, 12-year deals because the market value keeps on going up for these players. So they're pretty soon their peers, like people like Kyle Tucker, or even maybe let me just throw out Pedro Leon comes up and he's a star. Then he gets maybe 30 million when some of these people are only getting like 26 million. So I just think that the market is continuing to rise. So these people signing a long-term deal, it's going to come back and bite them in the butt. But for them, it's not about the AAV. It's about the long-term security of being with the same team for the rest of their career. And that's what we're seeing. And you also see the owners and the team saying, well, we can kind of hover around the CBT if we go ahead and have the long-term deals as well. And so this is something that's probably really upsetting Rob Manfred. And he's like, this is not what we discussed about at the CBA meetings. And everything that's happened. So you know that this is going to be addressed probably during off season. I'm not saying that there's going to be ever a salary cap per se, but this is kind of Cohen saying basically like, you can't limit what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out there and spend what I want to do, and I'll pay the tax. I'll pay more than the Pirates are doing for their entire salary. I don't care. I'm going to do what I want. So, but at the same time, the Astros don't need to do that. They have the homegrown talent. They've brought in the smart free agents. Good thing they brought in Jose Abreu. I know he's a little bit older, but good thing they brought in Abreu at the time. The Rafael Montero deal is looking a little bit better as time goes by. And it's just crazy how this whole offseason has transpired. So I do want to briefly mention, and I don't want to dwell on this too long, but the arbitrator did rule that Trevor Bauer, his suspension was reduced down to only 194 games. So he's already served that time, basically. So he's been unpaid for these 194 games. So now he is able to play. The Dodgers have no interest in playing him. So I think they're going to have to pay him between 23 million or 32 million to not play for next year. So some team is probably going to say, hey, let's gamble and let's go ahead and try to pick this guy up. But that's going to be a PR nightmare. If the Dodgers of all teams won't go out there and get just keep him and put him on the payroll to win a World Series, then why would you want to go do that? So I don't know if somebody like Trevor Bauer, after what happened, he's definitely not playing with the Dodgers again after everything that happened in the legal proceedings. But I don't know if he has a place in baseball anymore. I could be wrong, but I don't know if he's going to be blackballed or anything. But yeah, he does any team that he goes to, it's gonna be bad. So
I think he's already blackballed, and I just, I told you before the show, I don't even like talking about the guy. I don't even think it's worth talking about, to be honest with you. The Dodgers won't touch him. I don't think anybody else should touch him. I think his only bet is playing in a league that's not in this country, a foreign league. I'm fine. Go play somewhere else, but don't touch Major League Baseball. Sorry, that ship has sailed. Now, if we're talking about the holiday season, let me just be real frank with you. I am asking you to be safe during the holiday season. Eric and I want you to be safe, and us at Locked On want everyone to consider, if you are going to drive, do not drive under the influence. Do not drive high or under the influence, because driving under the influence of marijuana is against the law in every state, even in states where marijuana is legal. That means driving high could get you a DUI. And if you think law enforcement officers can't tell you're driving high, well, you're wrong. Your friends can tell, your coworkers can tell, even your parents can tell. Everyone can tell. So what makes you think the law enforcement officers don't know when you're driving high? Driving under the influence of marijuana can slow your response time and can change how you perceive time and speed. So even if you think you're fine to drive when you're high, you're not. Because the bottom line is, if you feel different, you drive different. And driving high is driving under the influence. So remember, drive high, get a DUI. This message is paid for by the NHTSA. Now, Eric, talking about this spending and what's going on in Major League Baseball, there's a lot of talk of whether this is right or whether this is wrong. And at the end of the day, this is what I think the Mets have before them. And I didn't necessarily make a prediction, but I can see this happening. You bring in Correa, who's going to be there long term, well after Verlander and Scherzer are
sure.
done. Okay. You have those two guys gone. Correa stays. Lindor's there. They're probably going to re-sign Pete Alonso. They probably don't re-sign McNeil because they have a prospect in the wings, Jet Williams, who's a shortstop that they probably move to second after McNeil's time is up in 2 years. So here's the deal. The New York Mets, I think, do not win a World Series in the next 2 seasons. I think they actually win a World Series the third or fourth year, and building a championship clubhouse culture and cementing and creating a foundation set by guys like Scherzer, Correa, and Verlander, who have championships in their background, and that sets them up. So Mets fans should not be too upset if they don't win these next 2 years, because I think these guys that have titles are going to create a clubhouse culture. And that's what the Astros have thrived on, is the clubhouse culture. That's why someone like Jose Abreu coming into Houston fits into this, because he is a clubhouse guy. So Cohen can try to buy titles, but they're going to get beat up severely in the National League East by the former World Series champions in 2021 Braves and the current NL champions in the Phillies, and they didn't get any weaker. They got stronger. So getting to the World Series isn't a foregone conclusion for the Mets, okay? But don't be surprised if after these next 2 years, if they don't make it, that they suddenly are World Series contenders without Scherzer and without Verlander, because I think laying a foundation, creating a culture, having a couple years of more people in development, and they got some prospects coming up that got some talent, the Mets may still be in the race here in 3 or 4 years. And unforeseen right now, where a lot of people say, well, they're trying to win now. I don't necessarily know that they win now.
So I know that we want to talk about some other stuff, and we'll get back to the comparison between Astros and Mets for a little bit later. But Yankees president Randy Levine was there for the Carlos Rodon press conference today, and they asked him about, well, do you see what Steve Cohen's doing over there? He said, yes, I see what he's doing. There's no doubt the Yankees have been, are today, and will continue in the future as the flagship of Major League Baseball. You have to actually win against the Astros to be the flagship. I'm just saying. So.
This is a Cowboys type mindset. Like, the Cowboys are America's team, right?
Right.
Are they?
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't the 90s. And look, you know, Boone got hammered, I guess a year ago, and he said, you know, the league is trying to catch us. No, we caught you, bro, and we've been in the lead since 2015. Like they may be the flagship, like the most recognized marquee name, right? If you say Yankees in Singapore versus Astros in Singapore, you're probably going to get more recognition in Italy or Singapore or Australia or Canada or Mexico, right? Because they're the Yankees. Like I get it. I get the name, right? Nike, Reebok, Adidas. Which one of those is more popular? What's the Nike brand, right?
Right.
That's what this is, Eric. These guys still think they're the big dogs. I don't think the players think that though, Eric. I really don't. I think the players are frustrated. Now one thing the Yankees will do is they'll be motivated this year. Rodon will be motivated. Cole will be motivated. Judge is reinvigorated with this contract. So the Yankees are going to show
He's the
fight this
captain.
year.
Yeah.
And they're going to crush some skulls. But can they do it in the playoffs? That's yet to be seen.
Right. So I know that I didn't really prep you for this, and I wanted to just kind of throw it at you, so you
Right.
can get
Okay.
mad at me for later. But I know that there's not too much the Astros can really do at this point. But if let's say that in the next few days, the Astros would give fans another present, which is another player, who would that player be? And I'm going to go ahead and throw out Jerkson Profar. I still think that he would possibly be a good fit. Do they absolutely have to? Do they absolutely need him? No, but he would be somebody that could play the outfield. He could play second base. He could play shortstop. He could be that utility guy that you lost in Ledmus Diaz. Yes, David Hensley could step up and be that person this year, but this is somebody who's a little bit more proven. And David Hensley has X amount of bats, while he has 3,102 plate appearances. So it's a little bit more of a veteran guy versus, okay, well, let's rely on the rookie guy. So I think that depending on the cost, he could still be out there, but you know who's not coming? Tucker Barnhart. It appears that he's signing a 1-year deal with the Cubs with a option or mutual option for the 2-year for a second year, I think.
Okay. So are you wanting me to
Just pick
set
a player,
a
yeah.
Do you want me to pick a player? Let me just tell you, this is going to ruffle some feathers, and I really don't care because I'm part of the Astros cult, apparently. Yuli Gurriel. Yuli Gurriel wants a multi-year deal. I'm just telling you, like, it would be such an Astros thing for them to bring Yuli Gurriel back. I'm not saying it's a smart play. I'm not even saying it's a good play. But he's beloved by this club, and they're big on clubhouse chemistry. And say what you want about Yuli Gurriel, and I know we have Jose Abreu, but he just got Jose Abreu's agent. Does
Mhm.
that mean the stars are aligning? Again, I'm not saying I want Yuli Gurriel, but that might be the surprise play. And there might be like literally several of us in Astros community have been labeled the Astros cult. And let's just call this the cult of personality pick, right? And I think it's going to be someone like Yuli Gurriel. If it's not, I don't know who else is. I honestly think, my personal opinion, that the Astros stand pat, that the Astros don't make any
I
other
think so
move
too.
until the trade deadline. I don't see them needing to do any moves. I think the pitching staff is set up, and you and I can talk about that in the last segment about Hunter Brown and how many starts he'll get. And I think that's a key factor. We have Brandon Belak and others. But I literally don't think that if it's not someone like a Yuli Gurriel, that they're going to add anybody else. Okay.
Right.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying I want him, but if I were to pick some random surprise thing that the Astros did, I think that's more reality than a lot of people want to give it credit for.
All right. So, which gift would y'all rather open up, guys? Underneath your Christmas tree or whatever you celebrate, would you rather have a Jerkson Profar or Yuli Gurriel? Go ahead and tell us in the comments, and we'll go ahead and move on. But yeah, so I
I
know a lot
told
of
you it was
people
going
are
to start a firestorm. You know what? Look, and here's the thing I love about our show, Eric, is you and I have our opinions on things, and we have our takes. Our listeners and our viewers have their takes, and you know
right.
what? Their opinions are just as valid as ours, and they can
Right.
disagree with that. And that's where, you and I aren't threatened by different opinions. We actually welcome it because it opens up the conversation, and you become a better person when you're willing to listen to someone else's perspective. Because even where I may think someone is a good fit, you could give me a counter, Eric, or someone on the show that's watching and give me points that go, you know what? That makes sense. And I've actually done that in show, changed my mind over things that you've said. So as long as we're willing to have a conversation and as long as we're willing to respect each other's opinions, I think any person is on the table. And if you don't like Yuli Gurriel and me saying that, let us know. That's fine. But
Right.
we're not here to train your thinking. We're not here to get you to think like us. We need you to be critical thinkers about the Astros because we're students before we're teachers, period.
I know a lot of people are saying, well, what about Brian Reynolds or Varsho? I just don't think that the Astros have what it will take to make
Price
that
is too
trade.
high.
I mean, I would love to do it. Brian Reynolds, he would be great. If you're looking at the difference between the Mets and the Astros, center field is a big weakness for the Astros if you're comparing the two, because Brandon Nimmo is a great player. But overall, there's a lot of strengths that the Astros have over the Mets, and I guess you could say the rotation could be a strength, but there's a lot of what ifs for the Mets. But the Astros, you pretty much know who they are. But before we start the comparison, let's go ahead and talk about something we discussed on our before the show. Hunter Brown. If you look at all the roster resources and every place that's projecting the starting five, Hunter Brown is not on any of those. And I know that I talked with you before show, and I said, well, if he's not in starting rotation to the beginning of the year, he will not be in the bullpen. He's going to be down in AAA to stay stretched out and get ready in case they need somebody to go ahead and start, because you're not going to, I know we saw Luis Garcia and Jose Urquidy in the bullpen. Well, sort of with Urquidy, but not that much.
Right.
But those guys are starters, and Hunter Brown is a starter. They're not going to start with six starters to begin the season. They'll do that maybe mid-season just to kind of maybe limit the innings a little bit, but I don't see them doing that right away. But you can't keep Hunter Brown down too long.
Yeah, you can't. Hunter Brown will get his time, and you wonder if there is a move at the trade deadline. Do they trade someone like a Jose Urquidy at the
Probably.
trade deadline to get a position player or
Who
to get
knows?
a relief
Maybe
pitcher?
maybe spring training.
Oh, look. Here's the thing. I mean, you've got, Jose Urquidy was 13-8. I mean, he had the lowest Ks per nine with 7.34, the highest expected FIP, and the lowest WAR. But he's a strike thrower, and you know what you get when you have him on the mound. Hunter Brown will get starts. I think Hunter Brown will have enough starts to qualify him to be in the Rookie of the Year voting. I think that's how much they like him. But I don't know if it's going to take an injury, or who knows? Maybe something changes in spring training, Eric.
Right.
Maybe we keep Urquidy, and maybe Hunter Brown is that strong in spring training where they have no other choice but to put him as your
Right.
fifth starter.
That's what
And
spring training's for.
yeah, and so we're going to go out and we're going to see Hunter Brown compete. We're going to go out and we're going to see all these guys compete top to bottom. But what I'm excited about, Eric, is you have Framber Valdez and Christian Javier as your one and your two, Lance McCullers as your three. If you would have told me 3 years ago that Lance McCullers would slide down to three under Valdez and Javier, I don't know if I would have known enough about either one of those pitchers to say that would happen. But this is what the Astros need. The Astros need McCullers to stay healthy. The Astros need, if Urquidy gets significant innings, to do well. How is the shift going to affect Framber Valdez? Because he's a ground ball pitcher, and we've hit on that a little bit. So there will be some things that are unknowns that happen that go on. God forbid a injury happens, but if something happens like did in spring training with Framber Valdez, this next year, Hunter Brown would be the guy that they slot in there. Again,
Right.
they've got Belak, they've got other people they can bring up to eat innings if they've got a spot start, if they've got to give a 2-week rest, phantom injury. I'm excited about the starting pitching this year, and I think you have two pitchers in this rotation that clearly will be in both the Cy Young and the MVP vote.
Yeah. So I just think that the rotation is pretty strong as is, and Hunter Brown. I mean, I think that he's better than Urquidy. I think he's better than Garcia. I just think that they're probably going to give the veteran guys a chance first, knowing Dusty Baker, and just give him a chance to start in AAA. But like you said, he could maybe just wow everybody in spring training, and they'll be like, "Yeah, we got to start this kid." But also, you want him in the playoffs, and they may have to limit his innings as well. So that's something to take into consideration, because I don't know exactly how many innings he pitched last year, but that's something to consider. And I'm trying to look it up real quick, but innings, just keeping him fresh for October is something to consider. And so I think that him starting in AAA is very likely. Will he be down there too long? No, he's too good of a talent to be down in AAA too long. But I wanted, just for fun, I wanted to kind of, everybody says, well, it's going to be Astros Mets World Series with Cohen spending all this money. Well, let's compare the two rotations.
Yeah.
Let's say game one, would you go Scherzer or would you go Verlander game one?
Well, if I'm going off the past, Verlander was 18-4 last year, won the Cy Young. Max Scherzer was 11-5. Verlander had the bounce back start, got the win. The first game of the World Series didn't do so hot. Scherzer has done well in World Series games.
Right.
I would have to go Verlander, but it depends on who
On the
starts
season
the
too.
season.
Right.
But then again, if Scherzer's worn down and Scherzer's struggling at the end of the season, you're not going to put him there for pride's sake. I don't see Scherzer and Verlander working together young in their careers and now reunited. I think is a perfect recipe for, okay, guys, who wants up? Okay,
Right.
look, Scherzer's a competitor, but if they both feel like Verlander's the guy, I think Verlander goes game one. I would love to see a Verlander versus Valdez World Series game one in Houston. I think it would be an unreal battle.
Yeah. So Framber Valdez versus Verlander. I think that's a I mean, you look at stats, Verlander's better. Christian Javier, we saw what he did in the World Series last year. I think the potential is limitless with him. He was 11-9 last year with 11.74 Ks per 9 inning. His WAR was 3.4. And this was a guy that's kind of been going up and down between starting and being in the bullpen. So I just think that he's good, but would he be as good as a Scherzer? So the top two is kind of a toss up. But if you look at the other one, we don't know what Kodai Senga is going to bring to to America yet, but we know what Lance McCullers can do. So I would give the slight edge to McCullers there. Luis Garcia compared to Carlos Carrasco. They have similar stats from last year, honestly. Carrasco had a little bit better WAR, but Garcia had the better ERA, and I would probably that's probably a tie right there. But Jose Quintana had a good year. This is a year after he had what 6-something ERA with two teams. Everybody thought he was done. He bounced back last year. The Mets went out and signed him. But Jose Urquidy or Hunter Brown, I think, will probably outpitch one of these guys. But yeah, I don't want to dwell too much on this, but I just wanted to kind of briefly look at it. The top two are a little bit scary. You don't have that. I mean, I know Framber Valdez is an ace for the Astros, but you don't have that Justin Verlander like you did in the past.
Exactly. And let me just kind of qualify why we're speaking about this in December of 2022 and not in September of 2023. Because we're going off the premise, if you caught the first part of the show, of who are the favorites to win the World Series. And so the betonline.ag people put this out, our sponsor, and the Astros and Mets are clearly 1 and 2. So if you're asking in the chat, why are they talking about this in December? It has complete significance and validity when you're talking about the odds of the World Series. If the odds of the World Series weren't out and we didn't know and no one really understood that, it wouldn't be a topic of discussion. And we discuss this because this is a matchup that now everybody wants to see. I mean,
Right.
think about it. You've got Carlos Correa, former Houston Astro. You got Justin Verlander, who helped the Astros win their first and second World Series. You've got two former Astros, right? You've got Carlos Correa next to his buddy Francisco Lindor, who screwed up his ability to earn the most money as a shortstop. You've got Pete Alonso on the other side. You've got a Mets team that's gearing up to be in the Fall Classic. And who's the favorite to be in the Fall Classic from the American League? It's the Houston Astros. And Zach says, Zach is back. He says the Astros won't even make the playoffs next year. Well, I'll just tell you, as a founding member of the Astros cult, I promise you the Astros will be in the World Series.
Yeah, I just think that the lineup is good up and down. If we have more consistency from Alvarez and Pena throughout the season, I think the lineup will be dynamic. And adding somebody like Jose Abreu is just a difference. I think that if you had somebody like Yuli playing first base for the Astros, yeah, that would have sucked. But I think Jose Abreu just adds a different element. And I know that Gurriel turned it on in the playoffs, and that was something I predicted before the playoffs started. I'm like, I think Gurriel is gonna just explode because he's clutch in the playoffs. But he just didn't do it during the regular season, and the Astros were looking for somebody that did. But Kyle Tucker is just. I think that he's still got some room to grow. He's got the speed and the home runs coming. He had 107 RBIs last year. So the key for the Astros season, I think, is going to be in center field with Chas McCormick. And I know we've talked a lot about him. He had a 245 batting average, 14 home runs, a WRC plus of 114 last year, a 2 WAR. He's got to grow a little bit like we saw him do kind of in the playoffs, but we need a little bit more production, and we need him to take over center field, or Pedro Leon or somebody else, or Jake Myers. Maybe somebody's going to take over that job.
Well, you know what? The center field turnstile is going to happen, and the best player is going to get it. This is something I would like to address. NB12 says, what about catcher? Could we trade for Kirk, Jensen, or Darnode? And someone said, if Diaz or Lee don't work out. I think trade deadline, Eric, you could be trading for a catcher if you do. Maybe one of these pitchers we're talking about that you have
Right.
a surplus of. If you have your confidence in Brown or someone like that, you could trade another team for that. Catching position may be something that they look at. There is a pitcher, and his name escapes me, from the Yankees that they just let go, a left-hander who's actually from Belleville, Texas, I believe. And I put his name out there. Is he someone that they could look at? He's actually got a pretty decent career. And so would they look left-handed pitcher? Would they look center field help? Is Conforto coming? Someone like that? Are they going to be looking also at a catcher possibly mid-season? There are a lot of questions that we don't know the answers to right now because, quite frankly, we have to let things play out and go as they will so that we can see what route we need to take. The bottom line is, Eric, from bullpen to starters to our starting lineup, this team is well equipped to make another run into what I would say, hashtag run it back.
Yeah. And I just think that if you look at where the Astros are, they don't really need to add anything. And I think what they probably are doing is they're saying, we're going to wait till the trade deadline, like you just said, and see what we need then. But right now, I don't think that you're going to see them go out and get Michael Conforto. I think the Giants are going to be like, oh, we lost Carlos Correa, so let's go get Michael Conforto. He'll be our superstar. But he's not the superstar. But by the way, it's just so crazy that deal was broken up because of that foot issue he had back in 2014 or whenever that was. And yeah, I can see why you would be a little bit apprehensive, but that just means that there's a little bit of buyer's remorse there in the first place. But I think that's all we got. I do want to close out the show with a Brantley statement. He says, I just know how I feel right now. I'm excited, antsy to start swinging the bat and get back out there with my teammates. I'm really happy with where I am physically. Something we did not discuss in the last podcast is he said he will not start swinging the bat until mid-January. So
Okay.
he may be a little bit behind at spring training, but I think a professional hitter like him can get caught up pretty quickly.
And he also said, I'm a team player. I'll play wherever they need me. If they want me to be DH, I'll be DH. I know Jordan enjoys the outfield and enjoys playing left field. Basically, this is your ultimate clubhouse guy. This is your team player. This is a guy that the young kids look up to. This is a guy that the veterans look up to. It's
Right.
great to have him back. This team is better going into this new season where they stand already. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. And thank y'all for sharing your opinions. Thank you for letting us know like what you think, where you think we get things right, where you think we get things wrong, because we appreciate it. We just ask that you be respectful in the back and forth so that we can grow and learn from each other. It's been a great year, Eric, and we are nearing 1,000 episodes. We are nearing the end of the season. Next week, we've got a couple guests. We won't announce right now, but we have a couple guests coming on the show, and we'll meet with them, and we will round out the year with some pretty cool, talk and discussion going into 2023. But dude, 2022, Eric, has been a great year. I don't know about you, but I think this has been the best year for Locked On Astros. So, dude, thanks for being my right hand man and like, dude, freaking going through the fire this year. It was fun.
Yeah. All righty, guys. That's all we got for this edition, and we'll check you back next week. Have a happy holiday. Spend some time with family, and just remember the Stros are going to be great. And don't worry about what the other teams are doing. Just look at your team and just be proud in what you got. We'll be back next week, and go Stros.